Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're enjoying your Skillsoft conference. What I thought I'd do today is maybe sort of share with you a bit about my journey in the world of work, and I suppose most specifically about people and development. As some of you may know, most of my career has predominantly been spent in the recruitment sector, where the key driver of success has always been the importance and value of how you manage and develop your workforce. So I thought what I'd do is just walk you through a bit about my own journey. As some of you may know, I started life in a family business. My father used to manufacture leather jackets, and like any other Asian son, I think it was natural that I would join the family business. But for some odd reason, the idea of working in a factory making leather jackets wasn't quite as trendy as I imagined life to be. So I disappointed my father and decided to set up on my own and join the world of recruitment. And the thing that really kind of inspired me there was the interaction of people the whole time, which was something I felt a bit more comfortable with than working on a machine. The key thing that for me was quite exciting is in that particular sector, recruitment isn't a product type of business. It's not retail, it's not manufacturing. Your entire success and failure is really dependent on how you manage, inspire and motivate people. And for me, the kind of concept of creating Alexander Mann was my first kind of entrance into the business of recruitment. The business for me did amazingly well, where having started the business, I introduced the concept of executive search to the masses. In the 80s, when I started the business, the industry was kind of split into three categories. You had executive search was at the kind of top end. You had mid-market search, where you had people like Michael Page, Robert Walters, and then you had the high street. And the idea that I'd come up with was, why is executive search only available to the very elite and top in the recruitment sector? Why couldn't you bring search to the masses? And when I did that, everybody said it was crazy, it was ridiculous, because that's an elite service. You don't apply that to the mid-range. And sometimes when you're young, naive, and you don't know any different, you challenge convention, which is really what I did. And interestingly enough, since launching that product or service, today what's called contingency search is a £3 billion market, because today virtually the whole industry has adapted to that. And the key thing I've learned along the way is, when you operate in businesses, the key thing that you experience is markets change very regularly, very consistently. And the thing that I learned at Alexander Mann was the business that actually I set up at the beginning looks absolutely nothing like the business it is today. And what I find so often when I'm out looking at investing in businesses, meeting other entrepreneurs, is this concept of change is something that people are not readily available to do. Because sometimes you'll find, as the markets evolve and grow, if your people do not move with them, the business actually can flounder. And therefore the concept of training, development and leadership skills within the business itself, I think is such a fundamental driver to how you create success in any kind of business environment. And that's probably where I think we've been able to kind of outperform the market by doing consistent reviews, consistent appraisals, not just on the business, but also on the market. And one of the key things that for me has been quite valuable is the concept of talent attraction. So if I look at 30 years ago when I started in the business, my key driver then was understanding that people are what create business and success. And even when I look at organizations that I've worked for in the past, most people, I think, see talent attraction as an event that happens because you have a vacancy or you've issued a new budget. When I set up Alexander Mann, I realized that people can transform businesses. And therefore, the focus for me on consistently recognizing that recruitment or talent attraction should not be event-led. So literally for the last 30 years, the one thing I do consistently every month is constantly out in the market looking for key talent to hire. All of us work in organizations where we have really talented people. The question is, do we have a culture or an environment that recognizes that talent, and is there an opportunity where we can nurture the talent? because I've seen two examples in my own businesses where two individuals have created something that actually will transform the business. So I think kind of engendering that environment, engendering that culture where if you have got a leadership and development program in the business where you are consistently looking at your people, looking at what the business is doing, you will be really surprised at some of the people you come across that actually could make a fundamental difference to the business. The problem is we don't even know it half the time, that businesses succeed because of people, not necessarily because of products and services, because I've met some amazing businesses with incredible products that don't do very well, because actually somebody still has to execute and deliver and sell that proposition. So I think in every organization, the concept of people and the value that you put upon people, I think, is what makes a massive difference. One of the other projects I got involved with this year, which I found quite enlightening from an experience point of view, was I was asked with McDonald's to do a campaign for them. And they'd run this survey in the UK where they found that through the value of soft skills in organisation, that they could created a financial model that showed that there was an £80 billion contribution to the economy through the value of soft skills, which I'd never come across before. And effectively, what they found was organisations that have a culture that recognises and values soft skills actually makes a fundamental difference. So things like communications, teamwork, decision-making, time management, taking responsibility. And I think when you look at organisations today, I think sometimes we're very consciously aware of technical skills. I think we're also quite consciously aware of career development skills. But the one thing that I realise we probably don't spend enough time on is actually soft skills. Because when you look at each of those points, if you look at communications and the importance of how people communicate in an organisation, it's fundamental. How people make decisions and the responsibility and the accountability they have to decision making. And I think if there's anything that I learned from that experience of working with them, is both the value and the importance. And I think if anything you take away, from this session, I think going back to the organisation and just taking a look and saying, what do we do about them? Do we recognise them? Do we value them? And do we make our people aware that these are things that are important? Because if you look at each one of those 5 points, to me, they are fundamental in how people are effective in what they do. I think in conclusion, for me, what's been the key learning curve for me is number one, it's having that attitude. Yes, we're all proud of our service. Yes, we're all proud of the products that we create. But ultimately, I think putting the same emphasis on people and recognizing that the engine of any organization is its people. It's what we do, it's how we manage, it's how we incentivize, it's how we motivate. But I think fundamentally it comes down to what do people want from us as employers, and I think it's a development. If you have a culture, an environment where people feel they're going to develop and learn, number one, they'll stay with you longer, but more importantly, I think you get much better productivity. Whenever you go through a period of success, of growth, the one thing you can be guaranteed is you will lose people. Because good people are always in demand, and there is always a good opening for somebody good. And if you're not in an environment where you're doing enough to retain those people, and I think being a recruiter for 30 years, I can give you 100%, it's not just about money. People immediately think it's because they can earn a bit more, but sometimes people won't leave because they love the culture. They don't leave because they have good friends in the organisation, they enjoy what they do, and they're being developed. So if you don't have some of those components, and the only reason they're there is because of money, to me, it's probably not good enough. There's not enough glue in there to keep those individuals. So for me, I suppose my closing comment would be, is to try and create an environment or a culture that makes you unique, makes you slightly different, that makes people attached to that. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been so enjoyable being here.